Good evening, everyone. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the Gettysburg Area School District. Board of Directors meetings and committee meetings are open to the public, but are not public meetings. You can see from the agenda there's an additional opening. Public comment is welcome and all issues will be referred to the appropriate board, committee, or administrator. Comments will be summarized in the official board minutes, which will be made available by contacting the business office. Please take a moment to silence your cell phone or any other devices. All members are present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jason, anything?
Under communications.
Oh, wait a minute. I'll go. No. No, this isn't communications, yes.
Yeah, we have one communication this evening. There was a discussion at the last meeting about having information shared from different buildings at times. So Dr. Matzner has been working with the building principals to kind of set up a schedule for them to do that. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Matzner. And as we stated at the last meeting also, in March, the district administrators will provide kind of an overview of aggregate district data with regards to assessment. But this is just a much smaller piece. Dr. Matzner, thanks.
Sure. So back in December, it was discussed, I know, amongst the board members about having the principals come to board meetings and just kind of give a short presentation about things that are happening in their buildings, just to highlight some of their successes. So what I've done is created a schedule. So at one board meeting per month for the rest of the school year, we will have one of our principals attending the board meeting and just do a brief 5 to 10 minute presentation just to give you guys an idea what's happening in the schools, some of the things that they're proud of, and some of their successes throughout the year. And we have Dr. Herb from the middle school as our first volunteer. So I'll turn it over to her for middle school presentation.
All right, thank you. Yes, I get to kick it off. Might be closer to 10. I hope that's okay. Just because there's so much at the middle school that I feel like we could talk about that I would love to highlight. I did bring Mr. Nick Sanders with me tonight. He's an 8th grade math teacher. I felt it was important. We're going to go a little bit out of order just because for the sake of time, I'm going to turn it over to him. I know there were some questions about specifically 8th grade math data, and I think it's really important we put that into some context. I want to recognize that we recognize that this is something we're talking about, particularly our proficiency data and even some of the other data. So Mr. Sanders is going to take it from here because he's really the expert, and then I have a couple slides to add on, and then I'll go back to some highlights from the building.
Thank you, Dr. Herb. If you look up on the screen there, the first graph I have is to kind of give you a little bit of a historical context of Gettysburg's proficiency and advanced level. So this goes back 2008. You can see we're in the 70s, and then we slowly worked our way up consistently, and we eventually got pretty close to 100 in, was that like 2012? And you can see we were doing really well there. And then you might look at the graph and go, well, what happened between 2014 and 2015? A bunch of things happened to Gettysburg. We moved into a brand new building. We got a new principal with a new schedule. That wasn't Dr. Herb. But really what caused that big decline was the state of Pennsylvania, the Department of Education adopted the core standards. And data throughout the entire state looked like that. And I want to clarify that. Sometimes you hear core standards and you think, oh, the new math. That's not the new math. The core standards we all learned. We just learned them in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry in the high school. Now all 8th graders are being assessed on that at the end of their 8th grade year. So you can imagine like the percent's going to go down there. So then if you kind of look around, 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, we're pretty consistent there, like in the 60 range, almost getting to 70. And then we all know what happened in 2020, right? That was the pandemic, and you can see what happened in 2021 there. Just to give you an idea, like, they're the standards, I mean, the big ideas that 8th graders are being assessed on. This is not telling time or making change. I mean, these are substantial standards that they're being assessed on. And I know sometimes we want to like move past COVID and get past that. But if you think about the current 9th graders that we're talking about, they were 50%, 49.8 last year on the 8th grade PSSA. The year before that, they were only 40% in 7th grade. The year before that, they were 35%. And that's a group of kids that missed the last term of their 5th grade year. I mean, we left March 13th. And then the next year, they started middle school only going into in-person instruction 2 days a week. So I think all of these things play into that right there. Dr. Moore had said, this is kind of what got me going, this the good, the bad, the ugly last time. Here's some like really good stuff. Of the 38 middle schools in Adams, Franklin, and York counties, Gettysburg has the highest percent of students scoring proficient or advanced in 2023. So I know like 49.8, you look at that and you go, that's ugly. That's an ugly number. I'm proud of that number. And like, if you look back at the the graph, I mean, we're on our way back up. We're getting there. Here's an even bigger one. You know, I'm a math teacher, so I'm into data. I ranked all 883 schools in Pennsylvania according to their proficiency. Gettysburg is number 65. That's like the top 8%. So, and then here, just if you look locally, this was us last year. Gettysburg, 49.8. Our next competitor is New Oxford at 30.7. That's 20% lower than us. So, anyway, that's just 8th grade math. I know there were concerns before and expressed at a board meeting, and I wanted to address those. To the high school credit, I mean, Mrs. McLeaf over there and I, we spend a lot of time getting kids in correct classes at the high school, and they do see this stuff again because like we did, you'll see it in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and geometry. So thank you guys very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sanders. All right, so I'm just going to skip a little bit ahead because I do want to just make sure I'm not going to spend a lot of time because as Dr. Matzner said, we are going to be covering more of the data in a little more depth in March. But I think and I'm sorry you can't see this real well, but I think it's also important to look at our growth data. And I think Mr. Sanders showed with that cohort of students, we have ground to make up and we recognize that. Okay, our students have to make growth plus because we know that they have to fill in those gaps. So our growth is very important as well. And we're on the way up where we need to be. We are growing our students. This is one of my favorite pictures because what it shows is that for since 2018, and I just zeroed in on our 8th grade for now, we are well above the standard. So our kids are not only growing the standard, but they are growing more than the standard. So that's what's going to start closing those gaps. That's the important metric that we try to focus in on. And there again, this is just showing when you break our kids into 3 achievement levels, all levels, again, they're above the 0 line, so they're actually growth plus. They are growing not only to their standard, but they're growing more. And again, that's the only way we're going to close the gap, but it's going to take some time, and we recognize that. So really, this was just about putting it in context for you. That's it. I think part of our job is making sure that everyone understands what it is we're doing and why. So when we're highlighting, GAMS, I wanted to make sure we highlighted, the great things that we are doing while recognizing the challenges and the obstacles that we do have in front of us. So I'm going to go backwards and I'm going to highlight some really important things in a couple minutes from the middle school. First of all, it's our students. I want to start with our students because we have some great things going on. And again, I know this is a little small, but we have some students who won some pretty big awards from Scope magazine. We had a writing contest winner with Henry Russell, Taryn He, and Charlotte Garrett. We're waiting to hear about their results in a national STEM challenge. We have a number of students who attended County Chorus. They're listed. Allegra Dorman made the Harrisburg Symphony Junior Youth Orchestra. We have 4 students who were selected to play in the string quartet. which is phenomenal. And just some upcoming things. I don't have the specifics because I don't want to, apparently TSA, some of the judges didn't have the names right, but we did have our TSA compete this weekend. We had 2 first place finishers, 2 second place finishers, 3 third place finishers, 2 fourth place, and 3 fifth place. All of our students placed at TSA. We have Envirothon coming up. We have some more writing challenges. So I think I'd like to highlight our students because they're doing, and these are extra things. You know, these are things outside of the classroom. I like to highlight our Warrior Pride program. I don't know that everybody understands what that's about, but when we start our school year as a faculty and staff, we look at 2 things, student learning and student wellness. It's where we start every year. Those are our 2 prongs. Everything we do falls under that umbrella. So you won't see us doing anything that doesn't apply to one of those things. Our Warrior Pride program applies to our student wellness. I won't read it to you, but it really has to do with our positive program in the school that promotes culture and teaches the characteristics that we want our students to have when they leave us. They learn about the characteristics in 6th and 7th grade. They have a lesson coming up on integrity. We've tweaked the 8th grade a little bit to have it be more application. We started to think like they don't need to learn about it anymore, they need to apply. So we started looking at how can these students influence their community, their school community, before they go out into the bigger community. So 8th grade students are learning about the characteristics, but they're applying them through choices of activities that positively impact the school culture. And a lot of students are choosing to go teach the lessons to the 6th and 7th graders. Another day, if you ever want to smile and laugh, you have to come in on a lesson day when we choose students to go in and teach our autistic support and life skills students. They set up stations in the gym. It is my favorite day of the year because they really do a phenomenal job. Kind of paired with culture, I won't go over this, but I think it's important that you know we do Club Wednesday. That started with the hybrid schedule, getting everybody up and moving, and kids and teachers loved it. So we kept it. And what we do, you can see all the lists of clubs. It's an opportunity for students to connect with our staff and vice versa in ways that they don't normally connect in the classroom. Over chess, JROTC, Drone Club, Lego Club. So it's 45 minutes to do things that are of interest. And it's only every, 3 weeks. They do it in the morning during flex period. So I wanted to highlight that. A couple student experiences we had. We had a guest speaker, Eric Jackson, he did a program called The Ripple Effect in November, empowering student voice and proactive leadership. Phenomenal, dynamic. He went up to the high school. I just had a parent share with me that her 6th grade daughters came home and said he was the best speaker they'd ever seen. Really promoting student ownership over yourself and your, actions. This was just on Facebook, so I appreciate that. We got back to partnering with the Gettysburg College men's basketball team. They came in and presented a program, Stay In to Win. And on Facebook, it highlights a little bit more the keys to success. But these gentlemen did a phenomenal job of connecting their experiences as student athletes to what our 8th graders need to know. It was the best presentation I've seen by these young men, and we've been doing it a couple years. They were funny, they were real, but they sent a very positive message to our students. So that partnership will be continuing. We talked about that. And then finally, academics. We've talked a lot about student wellness. We looked at academic data, but to me, I'll always say that the academic experience is more than test scores. And student learning really has to do with what our teachers and our kids are doing in the classroom. So this is just some of the highlights. Again, when we talk about our vision in the beginning of the year and our 2 prongs, our departments set goals. And every subject area is setting a goal of what they're going to focus on. And this year we centered around on kind of recalibrating. We've had a couple tough years. We are making sure that we're choosing resources that are valuable, rigorous, relevant. We are practicing and learning about instructional strategies. I highlighted our math because that's a huge focus for us. Is our math teachers are diving deep into a book study called Building Thinking Classrooms. And what it all centers around, whether it's social studies, whether it's the UA classes, our STEM class, it's about preparing our students to be 21st century learners. Problem solving, critical thinking, that's what we're doing. I do want to shout out, this is my thank you to my staff. We started the year without an assistant principal, and we've had some bumpy roads since I've been there, and all credit goes to them. We got it done. We didn't miss a beat, and it's because of the staff at GAMS. They're the ones who made it work. And I also want to give a shout out to Officer O'Shea and Officer Weaver. They have been a phenomenal addition to our staff, particularly Scott Weaver. He has been a positive role model for us. I have no doubt he would do whatever he had to do to keep us safe, which is what we want. But I will tell you, the connections he's making with kids, the culture that he is helping to build in our building has been something I never expected, and I value having him in our building, so I wanted to make sure that you knew that. So that's it. Sorry, it was a little longer than 10 minutes.
Comment?
Al?
First of all, let me say, Dr. Perrin, Dr. Matzer, thank you. I think this is pretty much what several of us on the board have been asking for. And frankly, if it extends our meeting by 10 minutes, so be it. I think it's well worth it. And I think it arms the board here with good information that we then can share when we're out in the public or we're at Kenny's Market or wherever we're at. Mr. Sanders, in 2015-16, when we went to the core standards, are you saying that those standards ended up being fairly more rigorous, and that's why not just Gettysburg, but everybody took a downturn in results or scores there?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then also, and I would agree that I really like to focus on growth. And that's what we have control over. Yes. And the Pennsylvania value-added assessments, when we talk about PVOS being a year's worth of growth plus, does that mean our kids are performing beyond a year's worth of growth? Is that what we can interpret it that way?
Yeah, that's how we like to think about it, because it's really important when you look at those graphs. I try to remind people not to get hung up if there's negative growth. That doesn't mean kids didn't grow. You know, we talk about that a lot because we'll see graphs where the line's below the zero, and that doesn't mean they didn't grow. It means that the state sets a standard. We loosely say a year's worth of growth, and that's the benchmark, and every kid has a projection. They're supposed to grow by that benchmark, and then they measure whether they grew that or they grew more. So if we're going to gain ground, like particularly our lower achievers, we need them to grow plus. That's kind of the lingo we talk about, because they're never going to close the gap if they don't get their year, plus they grow a little bit more. So yes, that's essentially what it means.
Well, I, for one, really appreciate everything that you shared tonight. It's obvious the pride that you have in the achievements there, and I thank you for that. The only thing, in addition, I would ask for, if you have a few minutes at some point, those historically low-performing groups, those kids that are economically disadvantaged, they've been identified with an IEP, or non-English-speaking students, I'd be interested on some of the information on their performance and how they're growing in that regard when you get a chance.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's very easy to pull on the PVAS site.
Any additional from the board?
Sure. I'll echo a little bit of what Al said. I really appreciate you guys preparing that. I also think I understand firsthand exactly how difficult it is post-COVID to try and get people back on track, or that, language in what I did in school as well. So I think just seeing that amount of growth on the graph, being a really visual person, that's very helpful. You have a lot to be proud of. It's headed in a direction in a fast way. So nice work to you, and thank you for sharing that. Additionally, all of the things that the students are doing outside of school is really exciting to see. So thank you. I even wrote down the ripple effect guy. Hadn't heard about him, so now I'm going to look him up. So I appreciate that. But thank you for volunteering to go first as well.
Absolutely.
I will echo both my colleagues' comments, but I'll step away from my role as president because there's been obviously some communication about this, and I want to clear the air. I appreciate, and this is for me personally, and I believe I speak for the board, the teachers in our district. It's every day you're bombarded with social media, COVID, getting over that, what the residue of COVID has left us. You have to balance academic students with low-tech students. You have to balance IEPs, ADHD, ADD, mental health, learning disabilities, life skills. And I'm not going after parents, but we also have to have community involvement in that. That's what Skyward's there for. So parents can look at their students and identify problem areas. Make sure that their work product is right. Make sure they're putting it in on time. If I understand you right, if I think I'm correct, the high school and the middle school routinely meet and identify students where maybe they're not suited for a particular class, whether it's Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. Correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just echo, I appreciate, and I think it's unfair sometimes when you look at the big picture of what we're asking teachers to do. I've said since I've been on this board now for 6 or 7 years, I don't think we have a better school district in this state than here. And I stand behind that with every bit of our staff. Thank you. Any additional? Citizens' participation. None. What do you want to do? Routine approvals. As normal, 5.1 through 5.6. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
I have a
Question?
yes. On human resources,
Yes.
5.6, Tamara Nay, the position of central registration secretary. Is that a new position?
It's a new title for a position. It's being paid for by a position that was previously unfilled.
That was previously unfilled, but it's already been figured into the system as far as the salary goes?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If I'm correct, that was the position we have discussed a couple of times coming up, and this is now being filled, correct?
Yeah, I shared it as information that we're moving to a centralized registration. So that is kind of the focus of the individual's work, along with serving as a the person that would be the first person that you'll see when you enter the receptionist and registration. Yeah.
Any additional question on the motion on the floor?
Actually, I have a question.
Good.
Well, actually, I was going to ask if we could pull human resources and vote on it separately, but since we already have a motion.
I think like before when we did this, if you want to put a motion there, we will table or hold off on the current motion under question if you have a second, and then that would go to a vote. Is that not correct?
Yes, so, sorry, I think I got it. Okay, so if I understand correctly, you want to pull the human resources separately?
Yeah, pull that from routine approvals and just vote on that one separately.
Okay. I think to keep the board consistent with its prior practice, what I would recommend is that we would have a motion to pull that separately, a second, and then a vote on holding it separately.
There's already a motion on the floor, though, to combine with a second.
Yes, we do have a motion on the floor, that's correct. So we'd have to amend that motion to approve 5, excluding 5.6.
So you'd have to have a motion and amend and a second for that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I mean, it's fine, we can just go on. But I did have another question.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I happened to get a job posting that I saw for a secretary at James Geddes. I guess an anticipated position. And it was saying about doing, it almost sounded like the job description was similar to what the central secretary would be doing. Am I right, wrong?
The Gettys would be a building secretary specifically, so there are some things that occur at the building because they're the first people that people meet as well, but they wouldn't be doing registration.
So right at this point, there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Is there a question on the motion on the floor? Any additional question? Roll call. Cindy?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Michelle?
No.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Items for board action. Like in the past, I'm going to lump the 6.1 through 6.5. All of those deal with policy. 6.1 is dress and grooming. 6.2 is compensation plans and salary schedules. 6.3 is job-related expenses. 6.4 is working periods. 6.5, professional development. So may I have a motion?
So moved.
I was just going to ask, 6.1 for dress and grooming. I would actually, the more I think about it, I've talked about it with other people, kind of asked some other schools what they do, and while the policy is okay, I think it would be more appropriate maybe to actually define consistently what we're looking for, be it business casual, as part of the language in that, just so that it's defined, like there's no question. And that way, if you're going to each building, I know I had an email from Dr. Perrin when I asked about it, that, you know, they're going to be going to each building and drafting their, you know, handbook for the buildings. I understand that, but I would like to see something more consistent and have it spelled out in that policy that says business casual or something like that. And I know I've heard, you know, teachers, I've had teachers mention that, you know, yes, we wear jeans for this and we pay money to wear jeans and whatever. I get that. I understand that. But I also have had teachers say, you know, I really can't dress up too much because, you know, I've got a screaming kid that I have to pick up off the floor. Okay, well, you can do that in khakis and a polo. And there's a whole other conversation to be had about picking kids, screaming kids, throwing tantrums on the floor. But my personal opinion would be to, I guess, literally spell out in the policy, even if it's going to be a little more detailed in the handbook, my preference would be to have it spelled out specifically business casual in the policy.
I'm running into the same, almost the same box right now. There's a motion on the floor.
So-
No second.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there hasn't been a second yet. Can I perhaps suggest that we, it sounds like you would like to discuss the dress and grooming policy, correct? Like that one is separate in your mind from the rest of them. So, could I suggest that we move to vote on the rest of them and then open that as an item to discuss and vote separately?
I don't have a second, so we will start at ground zero again, 6.2 through 6.5. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Question. Hearing no question, roll call. Al?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That brings me to the next 6.1. In order to discuss this, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Question on 6.1.
So I will bring up to address, I know that Michelle kind of already said her thoughts on the specificity of the wording. I do remember when this was an information item, and I know that this was discussed at the policy committee as well, that having the board document list that it's professional dress that is safe for your job and assigned responsibilities then allows for the later staff handbook to go into more detail for specific jobs or for specifically what that would look like. So I think, I mean, we may disagree, and that's fine. I think that it does say, it's not saying that you can just wear whatever you want. It does definitely say that these are professionals who are coming to do a job and represent the school district well. And that, very importantly, I'm reading here, it does not cause a safety or health hazard, and that it's respectful of the learning environment. So, in my opinion, I think having it a little bit more broad enables for that staff handbook to meet the needs of the building and people who are working in it. I know that that specificity is intending to come. That was my understanding. Mike, if you have more to add, feel free, but that was my understanding from hearing the discussion before.
Yeah, Alice, absolutely. I'd just like to echo your comments. Like, professional attire, I think, speaks everything that needs to be said. If you're in the buildings and trades, and you might be wearing khakis and work boots and a polo. If you're, doing something in networking and technologies, it might be a little different. And same with home ec. So I think if we let the administration use the handbook to specifically outline different types of teachers and roles and functions, I think that would make sense. I don't.
And the only other thing that I would add, knowing kind of the way that schools work generally, that, clothing and professionalism across the board is a domain of the way that you are evaluated as a teacher in the state. So I think it's important to trust that, we're professionals working in a building and know how to come to the school professionally for that job. That being said, if there's ever an issue, that is on, administration and other people to bring it up. But I do trust that there are people that know what they're doing for their job in that way, and if there's an issue, it would be further addressed. I think that's all I have to say on it, if anyone else has thoughts.
Any additional? Roll call. Cindy. Ryan.
Yes.
Michelle.
No.
Jeremy.
Yes.
Alice.
Yes?
Tim.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Al.
Yes.
And I vote yes. That brings us to informational items.
Sure. The first informational item is 7.1. It's VITA charter renewal. I mentioned at one of the previous meetings that their 5-year charter is up the end of November of 2024, the current year. So they requested a 5-year renewal to their charter, which obviously we did about 5 years ago. So we did a site visit with a number of district administrators and our team from Stock and Leader, and wanted to obviously thank Christine Miller for giving us a tour and providing all the information that we requested. So each member of the team just reviewed kind of their area that they oversee. So we looked at human resources, finance, legal review through Stock and Leader. I looked at general information. Dr. Matzner looked at it, kind of achievement and, curricular areas, special education, student services. And then we also kind of outlined kind of how the charter school law works. So what we would plan to do, and our assessment found no areas that would cause the charter not to be renewed, is we would bring it back February 5th as an action item. So it's info tonight, action on the 5th of February. That's where we are with that review.
Thank you. The next one is 7.2. It's the wealth group. Are there any questions from the board?
Kenny, may I make a quick remark regarding Vita Charter?
Yes.
Thank you. As many of you know, I've railed on especially cyber charter schools, but charter schools in general, because of the state formula of how Gettysburg School District and every other school district in the state of Pennsylvania is being grossly overcharged. I think it's almost criminal, and I would really like to see House Bill 1422 that passed the House get through the Senate. I'm not real optimistic on that, but I did want to make a remark about Vita Charter School. Vita Charter School is the exception. They are doing the mission of what charter schools was positioned to do by doing the dual immersion of Spanish and English language, and I think they're a thriving school. I think they have around 250, 300 students, and I think they do a really good job. I think the leadership of Vita Charter School does a really good job, and I plan to support and vote for supporting the renewal of Vita Charter School, because they're doing what the mission of charter schools were supposed to do, unlike the vast majority of the other charter schools, and especially the cyber charters that are out there. So I just wanted to make that remark.
Thank you, Al. 7.2, the wealth group. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can Belinda maybe give us a little overview on what they're asking for? Because it's not possible to have a 403B outside of a job like that, like a public service job, correct?
School districts only offer 403Bs. Why this request is coming before the board is because we have historically in policy and procedures, we've indicated that a few years ago, I'll go back and say that there was a strong implementation to minimize the number of groups that were out there, because some of the groups that were out there, for such as Vanguard, I'll use an example, were not into sharing information between groups. So what would happen when someone would retire and give asked to access their funds, the information sharing was not occurring correctly, and so therefore there was no tracking mechanism to ensure that funds were being distributed to those that were requesting their investments. So what occurred years ago is there was a downsizing of the number of groups that were permitted to offer investments for schools. We currently have, I believe, 5 or 6 on our universability notice, which is an annual notice that goes out to all employees. It says, here's the list of investment groups that will agree to an information sharing agreement. So we all know that people will provide information, share information in order for the funds to proceed correctly. The district uses a third-party administrator called PennServ Plan Services. And so when a new request of a group is to join, the process is they are to obtain 5 new employees who solely express interest and to contribute funds with them. Once that approval is obtained by the employees, we present it to the board for approval. That approval then goes to PennServ, and then PennServ vets that investment group out to make sure that they will do the information sharing agreement and that no funds will go untouched or untracked per se. And then once that final approval is done by PennServ, then we can begin payroll deductions on behalf of the employee that has selected the Riggle Health Group. Does that answer your questions?
It does. I was just, so this is a deferred comp plan, correct?
It is.
Okay.
In for-profit industries, 401ks, in school districts, it's 403Bs.
And is this in addition to the other?
This is an additional
Okay.
request, yes.
Just making sure.
Any additional? Next policy, 7.3, overtime. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So when I got on the board like 2 years ago, we had a conversation in the F&F meeting about overtime specifically for, I think they were classified employees. Is this policy going to change anything that we had discussed there? Like the
I don't think we
amount of
changed
overtime
any
that
of
they
the
can
wording for
Okay.
this policy, but I think that I remember the discussion that you're talking about. When that discussion came out, we clarified kind of overtime rules within the district. So I think that those are operating correctly. So I don't think that there's a word change in the policy, but we did clean up some of the stuff that was brought up that you're mentioning.
Also, for quick clarification, for board members that don't attend the policy meetings, if you click on the links that are released when the agenda is released, any differences or changes in the policy appear in red. So it's pretty easy to pick out any changes in language or anything like that. And new language is usually bolded as well. So if you see something in red and bold, it's usually something that's been added.
Any additional? 7.4, policy related to sick leave. 7.5, policy related family and medical leaves. 7.6, personal necessity and bereavement leave. And policy 7.7, vacation. Hearing no questions, board committee reports. Do we have any this evening? Tim?
Building and Finance met last Thursday, and we discussed the 5-year capital improvements plan and discussed the windows for Franklin. Just went over that, and that was about it. I think the next meeting it'll come up for, I think, information or approved to the 5-year plan.
Thank you. Any additional committee reports?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So our board committee reports, obviously they're online about when the meetings are, and we have the minutes after the meeting, but and maybe this is a question for a solicitor more than anybody. Are we required to post the agenda for those meetings so that the public can see them ahead of time? Because they're public meetings, correct? And would that be a sunshine law violation if we're not posting because I got the agenda via email, but it wasn't posted how would the public know if they want to come to a meeting if it's not posted?
Sure. So, great questions, and I'd be happy to answer them. Number one, as district council, though I will not weigh in publicly as to whether anything may or may not be a perceived violation. It's not my role to do that. But I will say, if it is a committee meeting, is it an advertised committee meeting? Yes, it is public. Now, I'm not your day-to-day solicitor. That's Dr. Dalton from our firm. She may know more about the practices within your district. If there's any concerns there, I would suggest relaying them to the board leadership, and we'd be happy to.
And I'll speak with her and see to answer your question. But they're
They're
advertised.
advertised, but she's just talking about what is ever going to be talked about is not
Correct.
advertised.
Right, because under our normal meetings, the agenda gets released, and the public has the opportunity to review that most times by 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, 48 hours or more before the meeting. So I think where Michelle's at, unless I'm mistaken, is the question is with the board committee reports or board committee meetings, should the agenda, what's to be talked about, be released prior to give the public notification or notice if they want to come in and listen in person? Correct?
Yes.
I'll check with Dr. Dalton, and I'll let everyone know. Program reports.
Now I'll defer my time to the middle school presentation. Thanks for putting all the information together. Appreciate it.
Our next meeting will be February 5th, 2024. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Has there been any discussion whatsoever about the possibility of combining facilities because of the fill rate? I believe there's a 50% or around a 50% fill rate across the board on all of the schools and all of the facilities.
The fill rate, I mean, we have enrollments. Yes, as long as you're not looking to like op-eds in the paper for your data, I can provide accurate information if you all want.
Well, it was my understanding that Belinda had published the information. Or it came from Belinda.
No, we've had no, well, let me answer your question. That'll be easiest. No, we haven't had any discussions about collapsing buildings because most of our buildings are pretty full. If you walk through them right now, the classrooms are being used.
Cynthia, I would recommend making a date with the principals and have them take you on a tour and see it firsthand.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing nothing further, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.